Welcome in, everyone, to another episode of Let's Talk Utes. A little bit of a sadder episode this week. Utah coming off of a crushing loss to Arizona, 23 to 10. And let's just jump right into it. Landon, where do you think this game went wrong for Utah?
I'll just take the low hanging fruit right off the bat, which is the red zone scoring issues. Watching this game, Utah actually started out with three drives back to back to back of like 5+ minute, 60+ yard drives, which is really impressive. They got within the 10-yard line three times, within the 5-yard line twice, and only came away with 2 points total. To me, that's about as getting off on the wrong foot as much as possible. It's just a lack of execution. I think that really hurt the team. Obviously, you can see by the score. To me, red zone issues just kind of defined that game for Utah.
For me, it's just Utah shooting themselves in the foot. Like piggybacking off Landon said, the red zone issues are blatant, and then obviously just the play calling, just doing things that aren't exactly that wasn't working all game, and then all of a sudden they stopped doing it. It made no sense. The first three drives really were great. Isaac Wilson was dealing, barely was hitting every open wide receiver. Dorian Singer could not get tackled, and then they just stray away from it later on in the game. They play scared, and it's just what it's been for Utah the last few years, especially when they're down. They don't know how to come back.
Yeah, I totally agree with all of that. I think the red zone issues were definitely the problem. Utah really had no issues at all moving the ball until they got into the red zone. Then as soon as they got in the red zone, we're wasting plays by just running directly up the middle into a completely stacked box. We're not we're calling plays that only have one option on the pass where Isaac Wilson either has to, throw it right away to a covered guy or just take a sack pretty much. Really, I think the play call was the issue there because, like, clearly we saw Wilson was driving down the field with ease. He was accurate, he was on time, he was poised. Really no issues until the red zone.
I
Yeah,
mean, when
I saw an interesting stat today. Actually, it was posted in a Discord server that I'm in. On third and fourth down, Utah has actually run up the middle 89% of plays this season, and they're at their worst third and
Unbelievable.
fourth down conversion rates they've had for 10+ years.
it's just annoying, it's we have so many weapons this year. I mean, until Utah was playing from behind and Isaac had to force things, he was playing a really good game. He wasn't turnovering the ball. He was reading the field. He was doing all these things that were really great for Utah. But as soon as we decide, hey, let's not do the things that are working, Isaac had to start forcing plays, and he made mistakes, as a freshman would in big game situations. It's just really frustrating to see. It's like, why are we making it difficult for our freshman quarterback when we have the weapons and the options to make it so simple for him? When we just need to give guys like Brant Keithy, Dorian Singer, Michael Bernard, these guys the ball in open field. Instead, we do like we've been saying all year, the slow developing run play up the middle that's gonna get stopped 99% of the time because they see it coming every single time.
Yeah, I really think it's baffling that we don't go spread more when we run because all of our best run plays this year have come out of the shotgun. Like, I don't know if you guys have noticed that. Like, we've barely been
Mm-hmm.
able to run when we've gone under center at all. And Isaac Wilson, he simply just like isn't good at playing under center. And like, I know that that's like a tenet of like what Ludwig does as a coach, but it's a sign of bad coaching if you can't adapt your personnel. He's having way more success in these packages where he has multiple wide receivers, where he can lighten the box a little bit, and we're just not doing anything when we're doing all of these tight end personnel. So it's really Utah this year. It's been a huge weakness for them. I know that tight end is usually a strength, but I honestly feel like this year it's been a big weakness because putting too many of them on the field has just not worked for our offense. It's made us extremely easy to defend.
Yeah.
Yeah, touching on a
Or
little bit different point, I don't think the Utah defense was really the problem here. I mean, Arizona's a good offensive team. They're going to score, and we were also missing Karene Reed, in my opinion, Utah's best defensive player, and Connor O'Toole, in my opinion, Utah's second best defensive player. So 23 points against a good offensive team is completely reasonable. Like, if the offense had just, I mean, a 100% rate in the red zone is a lot to ask if they had scored 21. But even say they scored two of those in a field goal, suddenly you're looking at this game, oh, two more touchdowns. Utah won by 1 point. And that's just on two red zone trips, which isn't unusual. I think Arizona was 100% in the red zone this game. So just something interesting to think about with the defense.
And to maybe give some praise
I
to
don't think the
defense,
defense was terrible.
like giving some praise to defense.
You
Like
gotta give
Tedrow McMillan only had 50 yards or 60 yards. I mean, that's great. I mean, it's like, okay, let's take him out of the game. Anybody else can beat us, and they did. That's simple as it is really. Like holding Noah Fafita under 200 yards and not the best completion percentage that game. It's great. Like 23 points, like Lan said. That's a good game. Most of the time, Utah should win those games.
Yeah, the defense played a very bend but don't break style, which I think kind of fit the game. You know, obviously they gave up 3 field goals, 358 total yards, along with the 2 touchdowns that Arizona scored as well. But yeah, like I totally agree with all of your points. Like I think the defense did like a reasonable job. And I don't even think the offensive players were really that bad. To me, this is really a coaching loss. Like we looked very unprepared. We looked very unimaginative, you know, like we got out of Oklahoma State with a win by just on 3rd down, not even attempting to get the 1st down, just running it to the center of the field so our field goal kicker didn't miss and kicking a field goal, and that simply just wasn't gonna cut it here in this game.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just felt like I feel like Utah still has a better team than Arizona, but when it came down to like critical like swing play moments, the coaching staff just kind of curled back like into their shell almost. Where it felt like from the beginning of the game, for some reason Andy Ludwig thought we were already up 2 touchdowns. It just was really unusual to me. Like it felt like we were trying to play from ahead when the score was 0-0, which I feel like is a fatal flaw that in Utah losses seems to be a common theme to me.
Yeah. I mean, you
I
talking about
totally agree. Like, from the beginning, it was a whole, like, ball control game style,
Mm-hmm.
which it just doesn't work, especially when you have this good of a defense. People say, "Oh, you know, like, you can ball control because your defense is so good, they won't score very much." I go the other way. I say take more risks on offense because if your defense is that good and if you hit a couple of those risky plays, like, you're gonna blow teams out.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm just saying, like 2 interceptions from our quarterback in Arizona only scored 23, and they had some truly unbelievable passes for those touchdowns. But that's with 2 turnovers.
yeah, yeah. It's really not. I don't. Yeah, like Tanner, you guys said it's really not a player problem. This game, truthfully.
Yeah, I feel like I kind of saw this
Mhm.
one coming. It felt like I don't know if this mentality was representative of the team at all or kind of indicative of what they were feeling. It felt like people thought Utah just had to show up to this game and play okay, and like Arizona would basically just roll over and we would get the win. Like, dude, Arizona beat the shit out of Utah last year. Like, this is not a team that you're just going to walk in and like they're just going to completely roll over.
Yeah, you're totally right about that. I always thought the attitude was, like, extremely strange, especially for a point spread that did not end up being that large. Like,
Yep.
people were, like, writing this off as a guaranteed win, which is just not the case.
Like I'll be honest, I was one of those people. I thought Utah had that chip on their shoulder this year against Arizona, and it wasn't there, and it sucks. I think we can talk about the elephant in the room a little bit. Cam Rising not playing is a big factor in why this freaking game felt like it felt terrible all week. Oh, he's medically cleared. He's
Yeah.
medically cleared. It's I don't want to talk much about it because it's so stupid, but it's probably the biggest
Yeah.
factor in this game.
Yeah, I think people are just, like I don't know, like, for myself personally, like, you know, like, Rising is an amazing player, and, like, I love watching him, but, like, it just feels like that era is over, you know? Like, there's just he's played 3 quarters in 2 years, like, that era is done, like, he's not really even, like, on the team anymore, in my opinion. Like, I honestly feel like we should just focus on Wilson come what may because, you know, like, even if Rising comes back, like, who's to say he doesn't get injured in, like, the 1st quarter of the next game? Like, I think that's extremely likely. Like, I think it's
Well,
just time to move on.
I feel the same way where I'm at the point where Rising's knee injury is already a big deal. The run was a huge part of his game, and so he's already a worse player than he was previously. And then now he has these like injuries to his throwing hand. Like, is it really worth like investing this much and hoping to bring him back? I don't know. Like it's if he was healthy in like the next week or two, then I think bring him back. But it's approaching the point very quickly of like, is this even going to be good for the team? Like if we're already 7 games deep in the season with Isaac, like I don't know. I just feel like what if we get worse when Cam comes back? What if he's super injured?
I mean, like on today, like the Monday the 7th, Coach Winningham basically said, if at a certain point Cam isn't healthy, we're just gonna call it quits with him, and Isaac's gonna take the reins for the rest of the season. We got to think about our future. Obviously, I'm paraphrasing; it's not an exact quote, but I feel the same way. Like at this point, like I think it's more beneficial for Isaac to play the rest of the season, see what we have with him, give him as many reps as possible, and try our best for next year. Like, I mean, I still think Utah has a good chance of being really good with Isaac Wilson. He's shown really good flashes, but Tanner's talked about it all year. With Cam Rising, our odds are much higher, and with Isaac Wilson, they're still there, but they're quite a bit lower.
Okay, should we move on to talk about ASU? I don't
Let's
think
do it.
any of us are really expecting I don't think any of us are really expecting Rising to play this week. For my personal opinion, I feel like the earliest he could come back is the next bye week, so 3 more games. But honestly, like, I don't really know what to expect because, the finger injury is clearly more severe than has been let on, or something else is going on behind the scenes. And, I'm just not expecting him until the next bye at the earliest.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
apparently his injury was some sort of like A2 pulley tendon injury on a finger in his throwing hand, which is just absurd. I've never heard of these things until it happens to Cam. And so, from what I was seeing online, that's apparently like a 4 to 6 week recovery. And so with Cam, you usually double the recovery time, and that's when he'll be back. And so I expect him to miss the rest of the season. So I'm expecting, I mean, obviously Isaac this week.
I don't think anyone's really debating that. I think it's clearly Isaac this week.
Yeah, I will say
Okay,
previewing Arizona
let's talk
State.
about Arizona State. Arizona, you can go, Landon.
Oh, gotcha. I was just saying, getting to the Arizona State preview, I think one of the strengths of their team is they're very balanced. They're not one dimensional on either offense or defense. They have a few different things they can do to hurt you. Like, you can see Sam Levitt's had a good year so far. Over 1,000 yards, 7 TDs, 3 ends. I'm actually a big fan of his. Scadaboo's had a good year. He's always going to play well. Then their receivers also had a good year as well with 3 touchdowns. And so they can beat you through the ground, through the air. And I think that'll be interesting to see how Utah's defense handles that.
I think Arizona State's been like one of the biggest surprises in the Big 12 for a lot of people this year. This was a rebuild year. It was supposed to be a year where they're not good. They probably weren't supposed to get 4 wins all year, and now they're 4-1, 1-1 in conference play. They're at the exact same spot Utah is. I think it's going to be a fun game watching two really, really good running backs in Mekhi Bernard and Scadaboo. See what goes on. They're very different in my mind. Scadaboo's a bruiser. He loves to do anything and everything for this team. And Marco Bernard's very similar in that case. He does anything and everything for this team. But he reminds me, he's a lot more finesse. He's a lot more trying to find the open hole. And I'm excited to see like the contrast into really good running backs that do anything and everything for their team play this week.
Yeah, I think Arizona State has been a really pleasant surprise. Starting 4-1 is obviously, incredible for them with the expectations coming in. But I think, we probably should have seen it coming. Like, they have an extremely good coach, who's very adaptable. He's very versatile. Like, he adapts his scheme to his personnel. I remember last year I was extremely impressed when they didn't have enough healthy offensive linemen, so they implemented the swinging gate offense in 1 week just so that they could run a competent offense against the team. And ever since then, I've just been, very impressed with what he's doing, and I really respect him. So I think he has his team rolling. Like, they're well coached. I don't think that they have as much talent as Utah, like, across the board, but I do think that they have momentum on their side, they're gonna be at home, and they have a good enough quarterback that can beat you with his legs that could potentially damage Utah's defense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, in Arizona's last five, they've been playing everyone really close. 35-31 win over Kansas. One score loss to Texas Tech. One score win over Texas State. One score win over Mississippi State. They blew out Wyoming, but 4 out of their last 5 have been one score games. And I feel like that keeps them a little bit, I don't know, they're still kind of a mystery to me because I don't believe Kansas is a good team whatsoever. And they did only win by 4 points. But at the same time, playing at Kansas, you wouldn't, before the season, you would never have thought Arizona State was even going to win that. And like so I don't know. It'll be really interesting. I think this will be a good test to see what they really can do.
Yeah, this is a good test for both teams. Can Utah bounce back, and can Arizona State handle a probably the best team they faced all year? Well, the best team they faced all year in Utah at home. It's gonna be a fun game.
Yeah, I think that, obviously looking into the year, I don't think Utah fans were circling this one, but now this one really feels like a make or break for the season. If Utah doesn't win this one, they can probably kiss their hopes of, winning the Big 12 or even making the title game goodbye. I think 2 losses this early on would probably be a death blow because I think it would just deflate the team and, give them that seed of doubt that they probably drop another 1 or 2 along the way. And if Utah gets past this one, they've got TCU at home and then Houston on the road, 2 games that they'll probably be pretty heavily favored in. So, like, this to me is really the swing game of the season. If Utah comes out firing, wins this game, I think everything is still on the table for them. If they disappoint and drop it, I think the season is, pretty much wraps at that point. Like, you can pencil in, like, a mid-tier bowl game, in my opinion.
For
Mm-hmm.
those of you who can remember far enough back to the ye old 2021, you may remember when a certain Cam Rising mounted a comeback victory against Arizona State that changed the season. And I agree with you. I think this could be a major swing game like it was in 2021. Like, just looking on the positive side, because we've been pretty negative, imagine Utah plays this game, whether Cam plays or not, and we win like 45-7, and then we dominate the next 2 games. Then you start thinking, like, okay, maybe that game against Arizona was just a bit of a hiccup, down week after beating Oklahoma State on the road. Like, I mean, this is college football. Even good teams lose games. And I guess that's the reason, as a Utah fan, to be optimistic. Like, Alabama just lost to Vanderbilt 7 days after beating Georgia. That's absurd.
Yeah, I think this week in the bye week, even though Utah didn't play and there was a lot of weirdness, I think it gives Utah fans a little bit more hope. I mean, it gave me a little bit more hope seeing those really good teams in Tennessee, in Alabama, Miami almost blowing it. Who was another team that lost? There's another team that lost in the top 10. I
Michigan and
can't remember.
USC both lost.
Yeah, and so it just all those teams that were projected to go deep in the season and all these things. Same thing happened to Utah. A little bit different scenario. Utah's at home, and it's weird, but it gives me hope as a Utah fan, and I think it gave a lot of people hope as well, seeing that even the best teams do lose, and see this is the week to see can they bounce back.
Yeah, I mean, I know we've touched on it before, but until your team gets that first loss, your team always feels invincible. But then you need to step back and remember, like, oh, there's like 1 or maybe 2 teams a year that go undefeated in the regular season, like in all of college football. So, like, your team was probably never
Yeah,
going to go
totally
undefeated
agree.
no matter what happens. Like, even Georgia and Alabama, if they don't go undefeated, like, why are you, as like a Utah or any other fan, expecting your team to go undefeated?
Definitely. I do think everything rides on this game, though. That's what I love about college football is that every game has so much meaning.
Yeah.
So I'm
Oh,
excited for this one.
Well,
it's
thinking
awesome.
thinking ahead to like college football playoff, if Utah, it's better to lose early and then be able to prove the voters wrong rather than to lose late and give them like more things to doubt about your team. If Utah has a really strong rest of the season, I think this Arizona loss will barely even matter, truthfully, when the time comes around.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely agree with you, especially with the other upsets we've seen. Like, there's gonna be someone in the top 4 with probably 2 losses that
Agreed.
wins their conference. Like, that's my prediction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But yeah, this is totally the swing for me. This game decides whether Utah goes, 11-1, 10-2, or they go, 8-4. So,
Mm-hmm.
huge game in my opinion.
Agreed.
Okay. Should we move on to the keys of the game? So the keys to the game for the Utes: stop the run. We know Arizona State has been an excellent run team with Scadaboo and Sam Levitt, the quarterback run. Score in the red zone, obviously issues last week, and then win the turnover battle. Utah lost the turnover battle against Arizona, and it was one of the key reasons they lost the game. Landon, what sticks out to you there?
I want to focus on stop the run here. I feel like some Big 12 fans, they were exposed. They had to have like a Shaq moment. I wasn't familiar with your game with Scatterboo. Utah fans, we've played Scatterboo a few times now. I know the punter slash running back slash quarterback. I'm familiar with his game, and the team is familiar with his game too. They've played him before. So I think
He's freaking good.
he is freaking good. He's extremely versatile. And then I feel like the best part of his game people don't talk about is his endurance. He does not get injured, and he
Yeah,
plays like every snap the entire game. It's
he's
really
impressive,
special.
man.
But stopping the
What
run,
is a tank? I would love to have him on my
oh my
team.
gosh, same. Like I do think Utah's going to be able to stop the run. We've done it before, even with Cam Scatterboo, and he's more of a power back, which traditionally Utah hasn't struggled as much with. And so I think Utah will be able to stop the run here.
What
For
do you think,
me,
Ethan, about one of these
I'm
keys?
gonna probably beat a dead horse. Scoring in the red zone. It's going to be something that needs to be fixed. It has to be fixed. It's been a problem. I feel like since last year. We're not creative enough. We don't have good plays to run in the offensive system to be in the red zone. We have awesome plays. We seen work so many times. Little Brant Keithy slip screen, little Brant Keithy shuffle pass, Brant Keithy. Give him the freaking ball in the red zone, and I think it will fix it. Truthfully,
I don't want to cut you off if you're still going, but
no,
it's
you're
just to the
good.
point where it's like, can we even just run a normal play in the red zone? Like all we do is run up the middle. Like it doesn't even have to be crazy. Like can we just run like a
The
slant? Can we
running
run an out? Like
The running,
Yes.
yeah. The running out of the 12, 13, 14 personnel kills me because it's just not effective. Like, it just has not worked with Wilson. Like, maybe it's different with Rising, but it just hasn't worked with Wilson. We've run way better with Wilson when it's been out of the shotgun, give it to Bernard, spread people out wide, soften the box. It's worked so much better.
well, it
Mm-hmm.
just gets to a point where it's like we'll have 9 guys in that heavy set, or we'll have 8 guys in that heavy set, but then they have 10 guys in the box, and so it just doesn't even matter. Like I would rather have
It's just a numbers
five. I'd
game.
rather have 5 offensive linemen there blocking, and they have 6 people in the box. Like I just don't really see the advantage.
Well, like in the
It just
14
hasn't
person,
worked. Like, I just don't think the tight ends are good enough blockers, like,
Yeah,
to
like
make
well,
it
like
matter.
who's the elite blocking tight end? Like we don't have
Like,
like a
we don't have one.
Fotheringham. Like it doesn't make sense. Like why our offensive line has actually been great in run block. Like let's get like a neutral box and just let them work. Like I think that will be much more effective.
Yeah, I totally agree. Just get more space. We need space.
Dude,
Yeah.
I
Yep.
don't even mind the
Okay, let's
Wildcat,
move on to
bro.
the
With Keithy,
I
I
don't
kind of
either. I
liked
thought the
it.
Keithy one was good. Yeah. Okay, let's move on to the Arizona State keys to the game, which are pressure the quarterback. As we've seen, many teams have pressured Wilson, and that's been basically the best thing because Utah doesn't run any quick routes or anything to beat you over the top. It's all intermediate routes, so pressure works extremely well. Feed Scatterboo, obviously self-explanatory. He's been a beast this year, and then bend but don't break. If I was Arizona State, I would keep everything in front of me. Utah has not shown in the last 5 years the ability to take you over the top. Like I can probably count on one hand the number of times it's happened. And so I would just keep everything in front of you, just make them do those intermediate routes that just drive me crazy. And, you're probably going to do pretty well on defense if you do that.
Yeah, to me, I feel like the pressure the QB and bend don't break are almost related in a way. Teams have had a lot of success playing with like a really deep safety, like single high or even 2 guys deep, and then just sending everyone else blitz. Like giving up the short stuff, just let Utah have it. But like Utah will not be running up the middle, and they will not like be throwing way over the top. It's Utah has no intermediate like way to break that.
yeah, I don't really have much to add. You guys really hit everything on the head. Arizona State, they have a really simple task. Give the ball to Skadaboo and just don't shoot themselves in the foot, and they have a really good shot winning this game.
Yeah, I think the Arizona kind of showed the method of how you could run on Utah, where they would spread Utah out, and then some well-timed like outside and off tackle runs really hurt Utah actually. And I think
Mm-hmm.
if Arizona State gets into a similar scenario where Scadaboo's starting to break tackles and run free because he's very hard to bring down, it's going to be tough for the Utah defense.
With a lack of like speed on the edge for Utah, especially on the right side when where Fillinger really likes to play, it's hard. I mean, you got guys. That's why Connor O'Toole and Corinne Reader miss so much
Hmm.
because like Lander Barton and Van Fillinger, they're great. They're doing really good this year, but they don't have that speed that Reed and O'Toole has. That we are desperately missing on the edge.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, slight tangent but related. I feel like Barton has lost his identity a little bit this season, where it just kind of feels
Yeah.
like, I don't
Valid.
know, like it doesn't feel like he's being utilized. It feels like he's more playing how he has to rather than where he would fit best with Karene read out.
Mm-hmm. I feel like he's not
I
the he's the,
definitely feel like it's been a disappointing season for Barton, in
For
my
sure.
opinion. Like, I
He
thought he would
hasn't.
take over the reins as probably the best defensive player, but I think he's been pretty average so far.
Yeah, it's like he hasn't been bad, but he's like pretty clearly the third or fourth or fifth best defensive player, which is a little disappointing.
mm-hmm.
I
I think
wouldn't even
he
say he's close to the top 5 for me right now. Like, I don't think he's been that
Mm,
good this year.
for me, he's just been one of those players where I think he struggles a little bit having like the coach to player calm. I think that's where Reed really like shined, and he kind of struggles with that a little bit. Not saying like anything bad about him. It's more the fact that it's a lot more responsibility on him. I feel like he doesn't bode well there. I feel like his skill set is just letting him play football.
Yeah. I'm also not expecting, Karene Reed or Connor O'Toole to be back for this game. I don't know about you
hmm.
Yeah.
guys, but I don't expect
Yeah,
that.
there's been word that they won't be back for this game, which is really unfortunate, super unlucky.
Which is the most concerning part
Yeah.
for me, honestly, outside of
Yeah.
Cam.
Okay, let's move on to the predictions. Landon, do you
So
wanna go?
I see.
I can start out right here. I just think that Utah, they're not going to be able to get right this game. I think that that was a big blow to the team morale. And I just feel like with everything going on with Cam, the defensive injuries, the guys are going to kind of be scrambling. Whereas Arizona State is going to feel like this is their statement game of the season, this is their most important game. I think we're going to go there and it's going to be more of the same. If you've been a Utah fan for a while in the Andy Ludwig era, he doesn't really learn or improve ever. He's basically the same that he was every single year. So I predict a super similar game here. I think we'll have similar yardage, maybe a little more, maybe more first downs. I just think we'll struggle to convert on third and fourth down as well as in the red zone. I mean, just exactly what we've been doing.
For me, I have a Utah win, 20-13. I got to keep my optimism high. That's who I am. I do think it's just going to be a little bit more of a conservative game for the Utah play calling, which is quite concerning for a lot of people. If you hear that, I feel like it's going to be less passing. I mean, Isaac Wilson threw 40 times last game, and I can't remember a time where a Utah quarterback did that on a game where we scored 10
Bryson
points.
Barnes, actually, believe it or not, Bryson had 50
Well, I
pass
mean,
We
attempts in a
threw him
game.
like 60 times.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
yeah,
think he
and what I'm
actually
saying
set
is
the
when we scored
record for
10
most
points.
pass attempts against Arizona, weirdly, last year. So all time most
Yeah,
pass
it's
attempts.
Ironically.
and so I feel like Utah they're gonna rely on the short game and a lot of running, and I think it's gonna shorten the game, which will allow Utah, I think, to be able to drain out some of the clock that limits Arizona, and Arizona their heavy run team as well. So I think it's gonna be a fast game, which is gonna allow a lot less possessions. I think Utah can squeak out a win uh, away from home and win 20-13 this week.
Yeah, I agree with a lot with Landon. I don't think like, especially the offensive coaching staff really learns anything from their mistakes.
No.
I think from having a bad offensive game, like, what they do is, like, they shut it down even more, in my
Hmm.
opinion. That's, like, been my Utah experience. Um, so yeah, I think Utah will be able to run the ball a little bit in this game, and I expect it to be an extremely run-heavy game. I just think they're gonna get gashed in the run game as well with Scatterboo just destroying them, and especially the QB run from Levitt. I think he's really gonna punish them with that. And I think that, couple turnovers, enough is gonna go in their way. Utah's been noticeably worse on the road over the last, 10 years. It's difficult to win on the road in, a power conference. And so, yeah, I'm expecting a kind of a heartbreaking loss to Arizona State. I think Arizona State has really good coaching. I think the Utah mojo is like at an all-time low. Like the players seem low energy. They don't really seem like they believe either. So yeah, to me, I think it's going to be, more of the same with the offense, and the defense is going to struggle on the road, I think, against the run.
Yeah, I think this game will almost be like looking in a mirror against Arizona. Like they'll score in a slightly different way, Arizona State will. But I just think that so many of the same talking points, like we might just re-upload this video, truly.
Yeah, like it does feel like a similar-ish game to me, for sure.
Because like truthfully, I think Arizona State is about as good as Arizona is. I think it could be just as hard of a game.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, by the point spread, this one is closer than Arizona was last week.
Mm-hmm.
So, Vegas views this as a harder game for Utah than they did last week. So yeah, okay. Yeah, hopefully me and Landon are wrong. Hopefully Ethan's right. So last week we had a couple of picks. So everyone missed but me. Landon missed on Brant Keithy over 1.5 TDs all purpose. Ethan lost on the pick six streak continues. I won on Rising does not play, but that doesn't feel like much of a win to me, to be honest. And then Connor lost on Dorian Singer TD. So that was
This
our
is
performance for
actually
last
this
week.
is actually so dark because you were like 0 of 4 on your locks of the week, and so you tried some reverse psychology. Because if you say Rising doesn't play, then that means he will. But
Yeah.
then it's like no one. I mean, Rising's injury aura is like untouchable. It's insane.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, let's move on to our picks for this week.
So I have my point total below the 45.5 barely. If you look at my prediction, I predicted 45 points. I just don't feel like I want to believe that Utah's offense is going to score a lot, but I just don't think they will. And then Utah has a pretty good defense always.
For me, I just have Isaac Wilson with less than 1 turnover. I feel like he's
So
just going to
0.
be able. Yeah,
So 0 turnovers.
yeah. I probably should have just said Isaac Wilson 0 turnovers, but anyways. I just feel like he's going to be a little bit more. He's a little bit more comfortable. This is going to be his 4th game starting, and I think he's going to have a really good game. Probably not as hyperactive as he was last game. Not as many passing attempts, like I said earlier, and being able to kind of have a clean game this week.
Yeah, that's actually funny because I remember talking to you guys before the season started, and I said, "Oh, over under 1.5 games Isaac Wilson started this year."
Dude,
And we all went over. But
yeah.
I mean, he's about to start his 4th in 6 games.
He's
Like
played
4 in
more
6
than
games.
Cam
It's
has the
ridiculous.
last 2 years, bro. By
Yeah,
far.
it's actually crazy. Yeah. Okay. And then for me, my lock of the week was over 3.5 combined turnovers. I think this is going to be a pretty sloppy game. I think that, Arizona kind of plays loose because I think that, they're still building up the team to a point where they can like really lock it down. And also they're just a higher risk team because their coach is just smart in that way and realizes that allows them to create probably more big plays than big negative plays. But I'm expecting a lot of turnovers in this. I'm expecting at least 4 turnovers. And so, yep, that's my lock of the week, over 3.5
Hey,
combined turnovers.
it's funny. We're basically the exact opposite this week. I feel like it's gonna be a pretty clean game, and you're the exact opposite. I hope one of us is right.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
I just feel like the throws they give Isaac Wilson are going to be like very one read. He's only going to have one chance because they think that makes it less likely to throw an interception. But I think that makes it much more likely because then he can't decide who's open. So to me, like making the offense more conservative increases the chances that a young quarterback throws interceptions.
It makes sense.
Okay, let's move on. So Big 12 power ratings this week. Number 1, Iowa State. Number 2, Utah. Iowa State was easily number 1. The lowest rank was number 2. Any thoughts on them? 5-0. I think they've beaten everyone in their past so far.
Yeah, I mean, a win over Iowa, 5-0. They've just looked extremely balanced, extremely strong. It's hard not to put them number 1, and I had them number 1.
Hey, all I'm gonna say is I've been on them since day
never
1.
mind. I didn't have them number 1, actually. I had them number 2.
All I'm saying is I've been on them since day 1. They've been my top 3 since the start of this podcast this season.
Yeah, good
So,
pick.
But yeah, I think they're a great team. I like Rocco Beck a lot, so I'm excited to see what they do. It's gonna be a fun game when they come to us this year.
Yeah, so Utah, highest rank was number 1, Landon. I think Ethan had him number 2. I was the one that had him number 7 because frankly, like I just don't think Utah has like shown anything this year. Like they don't have any quality wins. They also just like haven't looked good playing and like the talent like to me like looks pretty bad so far. I feel like most of the players have disappointed. So like yeah, like I get like the theory of Utah, but like 5 games in, I feel like you have to judge on like what Utah actually looks like and I think they've looked pretty bad so far.
Makes sense.
I feel like with Utah, the reason that I'm still high on them is just the upside potential. I think that Utah typically is a team that has played their best ball late in the year, especially the recent iterations of Utah. And I mean, if they lose this game, they're going to drop very, very far in my rankings because, like, okay, that's kind of just who they are. But I think that even a good team can have a bad loss sometimes. And I think that once things start clicking with Utah, I think that they're going to be the best team in the Big 12. If not, they already are the best team in the Big 12. And we just need more games to see that.
I just think they badly need a statement game because they really have not had
Oh,
a
for
good win
sure.
yet.
No, they
Yeah,
haven't.
like Utah has not had a good win yet. Okay, let's talk about kind of this next group of teams here: Kansas State, Arizona, Colorado, and Arizona State. I was honestly pretty surprised to see Arizona tied for 4th after they lost to Texas Tech. I think Arizona's good, but they're not like I don't know. That was a little too high for me.
Yeah, I had
Any
Zona
other
at
teams
two.
you guys want to comment?
I had Zona at 2. Um, I think I just had that Utah. That was a big win for me. I mean, going to Utah, the place they don't lose often, and winning that game was big for me. So I had them at 2. That's probably about it for really only
Yeah, my thoughts on
anything to add.
Arizona, I had them around like 4 or 5, I believe, or maybe even 6, but I just kind of thought like, okay, the talent's there. They were good last year. Maybe it just took a couple games to get clicking with like a new head coach. I don't know.
Yeah. To me, the interesting team here is Colorado because Colorado still looks pretty dynamic offensively, and I think their defense has actually really improved as well. And so I actually think Colorado could be pretty freaking good.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, Texas Tech should be mentioned, 5-1. The first 2 games of the season were just abysmal. Double OT with the FCS team and then a blowout loss to Washington State. But ever since then, they've honestly looked really, really good, like really strong. Their offense looks pretty good. Their defense has, improved more than I thought even possible. And so, yeah, I think I've been Texas Tech has been my surprise because after the first 2 weeks, I thought they were just terrible, and now I think they're
Same.
actually decent.
The
Mm-hmm.
vision's kind of been coming together. They just kind of were a team that needed some time to click, I think.
Bay-
Mhm.
Bayron, I think that's how you say his first name.
Baron Morton.
Baron Morton. He's a stud, bro. The dude's a really good quarterback. They have a really good team. Really good, consistent offense. The defense is still is suspect. I mean, I can't forgive giving 51 points up to an team at home. That's crazy. It's improved, but they still have a little bit to show for me. I think I had them the lowest in the group. I think I had them at 9 for me. They had some really good quality wins, but they I think one more week of this with an improved defense, they probably jump up my board a little bit as well.
Let's move on to the next page. So UCF, I think, has taken a huge fall from grace, kind of back-to-back blowout losses. Lost to Colorado at home and then blowout loss to Florida at home, on the road. I mean, I just don't think that they're the team I thought they were. I thought that they passed way too much in both of those games and they needed to run way more because that's the identity of their team. Like, especially when Colorado got up a couple touchdowns like early, like they just completely abandoned the run. When I think that, as a run-based team, like you just kind of have to do that sometimes.
I agree with you.
I mean, RJ Harvey only getting 16 touches in both of those losses is kind of shows what Tanner's been saying. I mean, he's probably the best, if not one of the best running backs in the Big 12 or the country, and they just kind of stayed away from him, which is just
Yeah.
disappointing.
It's like running takes more time, but also you're more likely to score. And like scoring is more important than the time,
Yeah.
Hmm.
you know? And so like they were like, oh my gosh, we got to catch up so quick. But it's like, in order to catch up, you actually have to score points, which you're more likely to do when running the ball like a lot. Yeah. Okay. West Virginia, um, dominant win at Oklahoma State. I mean, absolutely just torched them. I think Utah would have done that to Oklahoma State too if Rising was healthy.
I
But yeah,
agree.
pretty good win for them. Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of mentioned them just barely, but skipping down to Oklahoma State, none of us were high on them, and they've even like disappointed me truthfully. Like genuinely, they could have lost to both Arizona and South Dakota. No, sorry, not Arizona, Arkansas and South Dakota State. I would even say they should have lost to Arkansas. Like
Yeah,
Oklahoma
they're
State could be
pretty
staring
fortunate.
at like
Two
fighting
and
for
four.
a bowl win, like fighting for a bowl game, like very easily. They're honestly
I still
extremely
think they
lucky
are.
to be 3-3.
I still think they are.
I think they'll make a bowl
It's
game, but it will
yeah,
be like 7 wins. Like it's not. I don't know.
yeah. It was always funny to me when they were like, "Oh, like we're returning all the seventh year starters on the offensive line," and it's like that means they're not very good because like the NFL draft, they desperately want offensive linemen. Like NFL teams literally cannot get enough offensive linemen.
Yeah,
Like it is the number one position of need. Like if those guys were good, like they would be in the NFL. Like the
I mean,
reason the
like,
offensive linemen are there for 7 years is because they suck.
yeah,
yeah. There's a reason why like the Tennessee Titans have dropped like 3 offensive linemen back to back to back in the first round. Like they want them, they need them, they love them.
Yeah.
And I think
It's the most
like
common position drafted in the first because you get a good offensive lineman, it's the most important thing to have.
exactly. I think it just shows also like Alan Bowman's just not it. Like at this point, dude, it's you're kind of in a similar boat of Utah. Like you got to think about your future. He's not there next year. I think it's time to just stay away from him and to see what you have and maybe make some good improvements this year and see how you are. You see if you have something for next year
I'd
because
put
he
the
is
true freshman in. They
bad.
have.
Yeah,
They
he's
have a true
just
freshman
bad.
who hasn't played because the backup Garrett Rangel, he's terrible as well. He's not the future either.
Yeah. See, it's a conundrum for me because like I think Alan Bowman is terrible, but like I also think he's the best quarterback they have by like a lot.
I
Like
agree.
I really don't think it's close.
I don't think the
Um,
freshman's good.
You got
no, I don't think he is either.
You got three freshmen on the roster: Zane Flores. Um,
Zane
Flores is the one
Flores
they
is the
want.
yeah.
Yeah, that's the one they want.
mhm.
I
But
just feel
like
like
yeah,
their
like
issues go so
he's
much
not going to
deeper
be
than
good
that
either.
though.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
it's
Like
issues is
it's
that
just
there's just no good
the
players on the
defense is
team.
number
Like,
one, the
yeah.
offensive line is number two, the quarterback is number three, and all of them are like egregious errors.
The only good position they have is wide receiver.
They
It's their
have
only
like
good
yeah.
they have
position.
some good wide receivers, but everything else is just I mean, even Ollie Gordon's washed, unfortunately. He's just worse than last
Yeah.
year.
But I do agree with putting the freshman in. Like he's gonna be worse than Bowman, but like also like getting him the experience is important, I
Hmm.
think. So
Truthfully, I don't know if you can be worse than Bowman has been this last 3 games.
It's like
I think you can be.
I think so
Like
too.
Rangel was worse. Like
He
you can
was.
be. Like
It's
Bowman at
true.
least is like he's getting you 2 TDs and 2 interceptions. Like you
It's
might be getting
true.
4 interceptions if they throw as much as Bowman does the whole game from everyone else.
It's very true.
Okay. Any other teams you guys want to hit on before we end this segment?
I
I
would
mean,
just
just
like a
Kansas.
slight one sentence. I just don't even know what's going on at TCU. I thought they were
Yeah.
good, and then now I think they're horrible, but like I won't be that surprised if they turn out to actually be decent. It's just weird.
The
Yeah,
bottom.
it's my number one most disappointing team, TCU. Because
Like
like
what?
Landon, I thought they had a lot of the pieces there, and it just has not come together.
Well, it's like what in like the 66-42 fiasco was SMU? It's like outrageous.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And then it's like
and
you
losing to
handle
Houston
Kansas,
at
but then you
home.
lose to Houston. It's like I don't know.
The bottom.
Yeah, like yeah,
3 out of the 4 bottom teams in the Big 12 in our rankings are just like, what's going on? Oklahoma State, TCU, and Kansas.
I feel like
They were a
Kansas is a
top.
little more explainable.
Well, yes, but they were a top 8 team for us at the start of the year for the most part, and they all kind of
I think
just
they had like the
fumbled about.
third best odds to win the
They
conference.
did, yeah.
Yeah, number
People
one
got
could be
way
the
too
Kansas,
FPI.
hyped with a 1 year thing.
yeah, they got overinflated. Like, I genuinely think that backup Jason Bean might have been better than Jalen Daniels, and they just didn't
Well, I
realize
don't
it
think
because,
that's a debate.
well, Jalen Daniels really Dude, I was looking at it more. Some Big 12 fans were onto it, man. Jalen Daniels really he hadn't played a ranked team. It was
He
insane.
had played anyone that was good and had a good game is like the
Yes,
problem.
yes. He
Yeah.
hadn't he was a bad team merchant. Like he would just dominate like the G5 games and FCS, and then he would get injured before the season.
Yeah. I mean, there's some bad QBs in the Big 12, but like he might be the worst one
He's
potentially.
actually
Yeah.
garbage.
Yeah. Like he just cannot stop throwing interceptions.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's move on. So our question of the week last week was who had the most rushing yards in a single game for the Utes? A lot of you got it right. It was Joe Williams versus UCLA. Just incredible game. Did you
Infamous.
want to flip to the reactions? We had some people react here. All of them saying Joe Williams, 332 yards rushing at UCLA. That is just a ridiculous total.
And I mean, for that story is so cool. I mean, Utah was desperate for a running back. I mean, Zach Moss, what was his name? I forgot the other guy who got injured. Armand Shine, another one. We had nobody. And Joe Williams comes out of retirement for the Utes, had some eligibility. It comes in for that game and rushes for 332 yards
132.
at
How
UCLA.
is that even possible?
So,
You know all the great running backs that have played at the Rose Bowl. Reggie Bush, Christian McCaffrey. Joe Williams still has the record for the most rushing
Yes,
yards
sir.
at the Rose Bowl.
I mean, that game single-handedly got him drafted to the Niners.
Yeah.
Well,
Or signed at least.
So yeah, great job everyone who listened and everyone who answered that. We really appreciate that. The Utah Utes question of the week is who has the most receiving yards during the P5 era? Brant Keithy, Trez Anderson, Britton Covey, or Dalton Kincaid? Let us know in the comments down below who has that record. Is that the last slide?
Yep, that's it.
Okay. Any final thoughts from either of you before we end this podcast?
I will
No.
say, as an extremely invested fan, the first loss of the season, it always hurts so bad. I can't remember a time where it didn't hurt extremely bad. Utah still has everything to play for now more than ever with the 12-team playoff. And I think that if we get to the next bye week 7-1, people will look back at this just as like, oh yeah, it totally makes sense. True freshman, letdown game after Oklahoma State, like you just lose some. So I still think Utah is in a good place, but this week is a big week to prove it.
Well, and I will
Totally
say,
agree.
like, doing the pod and like having as much success from everyone that's listening has really helped, at least me, like kind of like digest this loss a little bit better and a little more healthy. Just like, okay, let's react, let's talk about it with you guys, and being able to record this and share our thoughts has made it so it's a little bit less of a stinker in my mind, at least. I just said thanks for all the love, dude. It's been back to back 1,000 views in this videos. Let's keep it up and let's see what happens.
Well, thank you everyone for listening to the episode. Please like the video, comment down below, subscribe to the channel. Really helps us out. The engagement on the videos helps us feel motivated to keep doing them. Thank you to everyone who answered the question last week. It always means a lot to us. So hopefully Utah beats ASU. Go Utes!
Go Utes.
Go Utes, baby.